The rain came down in sheets that night, turning the high plains into a maze of mud and darkness. Marcus Thorne heard the knock. 3 deliberate strikes against weathered wood, and he knew something was wrong. No traveler came this far into the Badlands without reason. And no one traveled these roads in a storm like this. Yet when he opened the door, identical Chinese twins stood there, identical in every detail, drenched and shivering. Their dark, almond-shaped eyes reflected his lamplight like startled deer. The one on the right stepped forward, water streaming from her jet-black hair, and spoke words that stopped his heart. Her English was precise, laced with a faint, melodic accent. "We want sex with you, not pity." Behind them, in the distance, he heard what she clearly heard, too. The sound of horses moving through the rain. They were being hunted. Marcus's hand tightened on the door frame. The woman who'd spoken held his gaze without flinching. Her twin stood just behind her, her arm wrapped in cloth already soaked through with something darker than rain. She swayed on her feet, her face pale. "You need to leave," Marcus said, his voice rough from disuse. He hadn't spoken to another person in weeks. "We cannot," the woman said. "The men who follow us will not stop. We have been running for 3 days." Marcus looked past them into the storm. The landscape offered no shelter for miles except his cabin. Every instinct screamed at him to shut the door, to return to the isolation he'd carefully constructed. Getting involved meant questions. Attention meant his past would find him. But the injured twin sagged, and the first caught her elbow. "Please," she said, and that single word carried more weight than any threat. "We know what men want. We will give it to you. Just let us stay until morning." The way she said it, flat and transactional, made something twist in Marcus's chest. He'd seen desperation before. This was something beyond it. Women who'd learned their bodies were the only currency anyone would accept. He stepped back and opened the door wider. They moved past him quickly, bringing the smell of rain, sage, and blood. Marcus closed the door and turned to find them standing in the center of his one-room cabin, water pooling at their feet. They wore simple cotton dresses, now torn and mud-stained. "Sit down," Marcus said, gesturing to the chairs near the fireplace. "Let me see that arm." The uninjured twin translated in a language he didn't understand. The injured one looked at her, then at him, her expression caught between fear and exhaustion. They didn't move. "I'm not going to hurt you," Marcus said. "That is what they all say," the first one countered, stepping between him and her sister. "Before they take what they want." Marcus held up both hands, palms out. "Then we'll establish some rules. You sleep there," he pointed to his bed. "I sleep here," he gestured to the floor near the door. "Nobody touches anyone unless it's to tend wounds. Come morning, you tell me who's chasing you, and I'll decide what to do." She studied him for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face for the lie she expected to find. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with softness. All sharp angles and harder edges. A survivor's beauty. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why help us if you want nothing?" Because 2 years ago, he hadn't helped, and a family had paid the price. The thought came unbidden, and Marcus shoved it down. "Maybe I'm just tired of being alone," he said instead. It wasn't entirely a lie. She translated, and this time her sister moved cautiously toward the bed. The woman with the scar remained standing. "My name is Leanne," she said. "This is my sister, Mai." "Marcus," he replied. "Marcus," she repeated, testing the name. "You should know, the men hunting us are not ordinary travelers. They are traders. They buy and sell women like us. They do not forgive those who interfere with their property." Outside, the rain hammered against the cabin, but underneath it, faint and growing closer, Marcus heard the sound of horses moving fast. He moved to the window and peered through a gap in the shutters. 3 riders approached, dark shapes against a darker sky. "Put out the lamp," he said. Leanne extinguished the flame, and darkness swallowed the cabin. The horses stopped outside. Boots hit mud. Thorn, a voice called out. We know you're in there. We're looking for some cargo that went missing. 2 Chinese girls. You seen them? The word cargos made Marcus's jaw tighten. He'd heard men talk like that before, back when he wore a uniform. Haven't seen anyone, Marcus called back. Just me and the storm. A cruel laugh. Funny thing is, we followed tracks right to your door. Fresh tracks. 2 sets. You sure you want to lie to us, Thorn? Behind him, Leanne's sharp intake of breath was loud in the silence. The man asking is named Corbin Drake, she whispered, her lips near his ear. He bought us a month ago from the docks. He will not leave without us. Open the door, Thorn. Drake's voice had lost its friendly edge. We can do this easy or hard. Marcus's rifle leaned against the wall, loaded and ready. He could take 1, maybe 2, but the cabin walls wouldn't stop bullets. Give me a minute, he called out. Let me get dressed. You got 30 seconds. Leanne's hand found his arm in the darkness. Do not give us to them, she pleaded. Whatever you want from us, we will give it. Just do not let them take us back. I'm not giving you to anyone, Marcus said. But I need you to trust me. There's a root cellar under the floorboards near the bed. Take your sister down there and stay quiet, no matter what you hear. And you? I'm going to convince them you were never here. They will not believe you. I know. Outside, Drake's patience ran out. Time's up, Thorn. The door exploded inward, and 3 men filled the doorway, revolvers drawn. They found Marcus standing alone, hands empty and raised. But they also found 2 sets of wet footprints leading across his floor. Corbin Drake was a big man with a face that looked like it had been broken and reset wrong. He stepped into the cabin, revolver aimed at Marcus's chest. Now, Thorn, Drake said, his voice a low growl. You want to explain those tracks? Looks like you've been harboring stolen property. I don't know what you're talking about. See, that's a problem. Drake walked slowly around the cabin, his boots heavy on the planks. He paused near the bed. Those 2 girls cost me a fair price. I'm not a man who likes to lose his investments. He gestured with his gun toward the floor. I heard about you. Ex-cavalry. Discharged after you refused an order. Went soft, they said. The words hit like blows. Ancient history, Marcus said. Is it? Seems like you're making the same mistake twice. One of Drake's men moved toward the bed, and Marcus's pulse spiked. The cellar was right there. Wait, Marcus said. Drake held up a hand, stopping his man. They were here, Marcus admitted. An hour ago. Scared, soaking wet. I gave them some food and sent them east, toward the territorial line. Figured they had a half-hour head start. It was a good lie. Believable. It gave Drake something to chase. Drake studied him, then nodded. Ben, check outside. See if you can pick up a trail heading east. The nervous man hurried out. Of course, Drake said conversationally, you could be lying. He moved suddenly, pressing his revolver against Marcus's forehead. The metal was cold. So, I'm going to search anyway. In the silence, he heard it. A sound that made his blood freeze. From beneath the floorboards, barely audible over the rain, came the sound of someone coughing. A weak, wet cough. My. Drake's eyes lit up with triumph. Well, he said softly. What do we have here? He nodded to his remaining man. Pull up those boards. But before the man could move, the boards lifted from below. Leanne emerged first, her hands raised, her face carved from stone. Mai followed, leaning heavily on her sister. Hello there, ladies, Drake said, his voice dripping false warmth. Miss me? Leanne's eyes found Marcus's. In that look, he saw accusation and resignation, but also a sliver of understanding that he had tried. On your knees, Drake ordered them. They knelt. Drake holstered his weapon and walked a slow circle around them. He grabbed a handful of Leanne's hair and jerked her head back. This one's a fighter. Needs to be taught her place. Leave them alone, Marcus said. Or what? Drake released Leanne and turned to face Marcus. You're unarmed and outnumbered, cavalry boy. He pulled a knife from his belt and moved toward my. That one's already dying. Infection. Might as well put her down now. He grabbed the girl's wounded arm, and she screamed. No. Leanne surged to her feet. Please. She is my sister. I will do anything. Drake's smile was predatory. What can you offer that I don't already own? Leanne's jaw worked. There is a camp, she said, her voice hollow. 2 days north. Other girls, from the same ship. 10, maybe more. I can lead you to them. It was a lie, delivered with just enough broken reluctance to sound true. Drake considered it, then sheathed his knife. Fine. You lead us there, and I'll let your sister live. For now. He grabbed Leanne's arm. But if you're lying, I'll make you watch while I kill her slowly. We clear. Leanne nodded, her expression like ice. Good. Drake shoved her toward the door. Let's move. His man hauled Mai to her feet. As Leanne passed Marcus, her hand brushed his, a deliberate, lingering touch. The knife, she whispered, so quiet only he could hear. When they turn. Before Marcus could process it, Drake shoved her out into the rain. The cabin emptied of everyone except Marcus and the man Drake had left behind. Boss says to make sure you don't follow, the man said, cocking his revolver. Nothing personal. The knife. When they turn. Understanding hit Marcus a half second before the man's finger tightened on the trigger. He was already diving as the bullet tore through the air where his chest had been. He hit the floor, rolled, and his hand found what Leanne had hidden beneath the edge of his bed frame, his hunting knife. The gunman was swinging his revolver around, but Marcus was faster. He came up from the roll, closed the distance in a single motion, and drove the knife upward. The man's eyes went wide, and he collapsed. Marcus stood over the body, hands shaking. He had maybe 2 minutes before Drake realized his man wasn't coming. 2 years ago, he hadn't acted. He'd let it happen. Not this time. Marcus grabbed his rifle and shoved extra ammunition into his pockets. He stepped out into the rain. The cabin had been his sanctuary. Walking away meant giving that up. He thought of Leanne's eyes, her quiet courage, the trust in her whisper. She'd saved his life. He found their trail heading northwest. Drake hadn't bought the lie about the camp to the north. They moved fast, but Marcus was a hunter. He'd tracked war parties through worse terrain than this. An hour passed. He heard voices on the wind. They'd stopped to rest. Marcus crept closer. For men, not two. Drake had met up with more of his crew. The twins sat huddled together, their hands bound. One of the men approached Leanne, said something, and slapped her hard. Something dark and furious ignited in Marcus's chest. The man he'd tried to become for 2 years, the man who didn't care, died in that moment. He checked his rifle and began to move into position. He set himself on a ridge overlooking the camp. From this vantage point, he had clear sight lines. Then Leanne's head turned, as if sensing him. Her eye swept the ridge line. Though she couldn't possibly see him, she seemed to look right at him. Her lips moved, forming a single, silent word he understood as if she'd shouted it. Wait. One of the men cut Leanne's ropes and shoved her toward a separate outcropping. Drake wants to talk to you, the man said. Marcus knew what private talks with men like these meant. He was already moving when he heard Leanne scream, not a scream of pain, but of rage. Sharp, deliberate, meant to draw attention. Marcus broke into a run. He rounded the outcropping to find Leanne standing over the man's body, his own knife buried in his throat. When she saw Marcus, something fierce and wild flashed in her eyes. I told you to wait, she said, pulling the knife free. Shouts erupted from the camp. Footsteps pounded toward them. Marcus raised his rifle as two men came around the rocks. He fired twice, dropping both before they could get off a shot. That left Drake and one other. "Get your sister," Marcus said. "Take the horses and ride." "No," Leanne's voice was iron. "I am not running anymore." She grabbed his arm. "You came back for us. Now let me fight beside you." "Thorn!" Drake's voice boomed. "You killed my men. You got one chance to walk away." "Not walking away, Drake," Marcus called back. "They aren't your property. You fool. I've got your other little porcelain doll right here, with a knife at her throat. Come out where I can see you, or I start cutting." It was a smart play. But then Leanne's voice cut through the darkness, strong and defiant. "He does not have her, Marcus. We are free." Confusion, then understanding. Leanne hadn't just armed herself. The screaming started a moment later, and it wasn't my. Marcus ran toward the chaos. He found Drake's last man stumbling backward, a deep gash in his arm. Mai stood over him, holding a bloody skinning knife, her eyes wild with a fury that burned away her fear. In the center of the camp, Corbin Drake stood alone. "You little witch," he hissed, his revolver aimed at Leanne. She didn't flinch. "You should have killed us when you had the chance." Then everything happened at once. Mai, with a final surge of strength, threw a rock from the campfire ring. It struck Drake's gun hand, not hard enough to disarm him, but enough to make him flinch. It was the opening Leanne needed. She charged, not at him, but to the side, giving Marcus the shot. Marcus's rifle came up. Years of training took over. He fired. The bullet took Drake high in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. The revolver flew from his grasp. Leanne hit him like a storm, driving her shoulder into his wounded side and taking him down. They rolled in the mud, Carver fighting, his hands finding Leanne's throat. Marcus was running, but Mai got there first. She picked up Drake's dropped revolver and aimed it at his head, her hands shaking. "Mai, no!" Leanne choked out, even as Drake's hands tightened. "We are not like him." "Let the law have him," Marcus said, pulling Mai back gently. He put his boot on Drake's wounded shoulder, pinning him. Leanne pulled free and stood, breathing hard, staring down at the man who had tried to break them. "We let him live," she said finally, with the knowledge that two women he called cargo are the reason he failed. "That is punishment enough." 3 days later, Marcus stood outside the Territorial Marshal's office as Corbin Drake was led away in chains. The testimony of an ex-cavalry officer and the bodies of 4 dead men had been enough. Drake would hang. "Will it stick?" Leanne asked, standing beside him on the wooden walkway. "It'll stick," Marcus said. "I made sure of it." She nodded, then turned to him. In the morning sun, without the fear and desperation, he could see her clearly now. Strong, intelligent, and fiercely beautiful. "What will you do now?" she asked. The cabin still waited, but the man who needed its isolation was gone. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "You?" "We will find passage home," she said. "It will not be easy. But we know how to fight now." They stood in comfortable silence. "That first night," Leanne said, her dark eyes serious, "I made an offer that shamed me. I thought all men were the same. You proved me wrong." She stepped closer, resting her hand against his chest, over his heart. "You gave us something more valuable than safety. You gave us back our choice. That is a debt I cannot repay. You don't owe me anything." "I know," she said, a small smile touching her lips. "That is why I want to give you this." She rose on her toes and kissed him. It was gentle, then deeper, a confirmation of everything they had survived. It lasted only a moment, but in that moment, 2 years of loneliness cracked open and melted away. When she pulled back, her eyes held both sadness and warmth. "A better memory than the one we started with." Mai appeared in the doorway of the boarding house, her arm properly bandaged. She smiled shyly at Marcus. "Thank you, Marcus Thorne." He watched them go, two women on a wagon heading for the coast, toward home. Leanne looked back once, her hand raised in farewell. Marcus raised his in return. He turned his horse south. The marshal had mentioned other cases, other slavers, other people who needed help. He'd spent 2 years running from his past. Maybe it was time to spend the rest of his life running toward something instead. He rode on, no longer a man in hiding, but a man with a purpose.